Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant. I'm an author, coach, and healer. You can learn more about me at theandygrant.com. Real Men Feel exists to remind men that they are human beings, that they have the right to experience and express all of their emotions. We have conversations that most men aren't having, but that all men can benefit from. I think it's been 5 months since we did a regular guy chat. That's when a man somehow orbiting in my circle of life wants to talk about something without an agenda. There's nothing to promote. Rather, he wants to share himself, his challenges, his accomplishments, and how he sees the world. Today, we have Anthony Scire. Like most men, Anthony wears many hats: personal trainer, father, husband, friend, mentor, outdoor enthusiast, to name a few. First and foremost, Anthony is a good man. That is why I'm glad to say, welcome to Real Men Feel, Anthony.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be here.
We met last year in an online program from the Mankind Project.
Yeah, it was like last August, I believe it started. Yeah.
What prompted you to get involved with the Mankind Project?
Gosh, couple years ago, way before the pandemic, I was my, upper 40s and saying to myself, gosh, I'm not very close to men. I mean, I have my close group of friends, but outside of that, I don't have anybody I could call up and talk to, be real with. I don't have a tribe of men. And I'm like, there's got to be something out there. And I literally went online looking for like men's groups, something. I just, Googled search men's groups, and then MKP came up, and I was like, what's this? And I was like, wow, like this exists. And read about their new warrior training. And I was like, well, that really sounds interesting and sounds terrifying at the time, but I put that on my radar. I'm like, I'd like to do something like that. And then just life got in the way and it got put on the back burner. And then the pandemic hit, and I was just looking for, that connection. And I went back to it, and I took my first introductory course. It was like 3-week course that kind of gets your feet wet in MKP. I don't know, I was blown away. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for men like me, regular dudes from all walks of life, that are trying to be better men, to rediscover who they truly are, like their authentic self, through all their warts and everything, all the good and the bad and the ugly and the funny. And just, it was great to be a part of something where it felt real and safe just to be me and talk.
Ooh. Growing up, how did you learn what it means to be a man?
Well, I mean, through my family dynamics, my father, my uncles, growing up in the 70s, it was that kind of, I don't know, there was no filter back then with men. It was like Archie Bunker. That's kind of like how I describe my dad in a way. I mean, he had a big heart, loved everyone if you weren't a jerk. But he told him and his friends, there was lots of off-color jokes that would probably not go over well today or be acceptable. But my uncles, and they all sorts of stuff I heard growing up. So my immediate family, and then just like a lot of kids, then you go through school and you get kind of socialized by our culture through institutions like school with your peers, and then marketing, what you saw on TV. So it's really family, peers, and just what we see in our culture through TV, radio, movies. Coaches, my coaches growing up, they were all drill sergeants. I mean, it was, run till you puke, don't be a sissy, all the things, the man box stuff that I've read about, I've experienced, and I've said those types of things myself, not even realizing why I was saying it, but it was because I heard it. So I would say it, my group of friends, guys, like that kind of stuff is all the time would be said. So that's a lot of where I got conditioned growing up. Yeah.
So at what point did you start seeing it as conditioning, and maybe it wasn't something that was bringing out the best in you, or whatever changed your mind to look for something else?
Yeah, it wasn't until many, many years later, like when I started becoming more conscious and aware of my thoughts um, and and then starting to hear other people hear my thoughts and reflect them back to me, and I'm like, whoa, I said that. And so yeah, it took me a long time to kind of start to go below the neck and into my body and start recognizing and being more aware of how I was being in the world and how I was showing up. And it's been a good, probably at least over 10-year process where I started awakening like to how I was being, and like, gosh, why do I keep repeating these things? And taking a good look at myself, an honest look, which was not easy.
What makes that not easy work of looking at yourself? What makes that worth the effort to you?
It's it's like once it's like once if you fly first class, like I can't fly coach anymore. I want to be in first class. It was something like that awaken of like, now that I peeked behind the curtain, it's like I can't go back to how I'm always being. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna slip up, but I got to do better. So it's this sense of a feeling inside me, an energetic thing of how I was feeling more authentic in myself when I was being more present, more honest with myself and with others, which I found to be a lot harder than I thought, as I'm learning in this process. So it just it made me feel like I'm getting back to my center. And then once that my eyes were open, it was like I can't stay how I was, or else I'm just going to be stuck. So it's like evolve or die in a way on the
Mm.
inside.
Do you find is it more challenging for you to be honest with yourself or with others, or is it the same?
Whew. I think at first I would have said, "Oh, it's so much harder being honest with others," or it's easier to be honest. Yeah, it's hard. It's easier to be honest with others, but when it comes to myself, I've come to realize I'm not so honest with myself. Uh, the things I learned from, No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think the night of like my covert contracts that I was doing. I never once I read that, I was like, oh my God, I've been doing that for so long, manipulating. And I'm like, that's not being honest. And yeah, so I've been discovering a lot of things where I'm not honest with myself, and it comes from a lot of my shame and fear and anxiety and not good enough. So yeah, I find it a lot harder being really honest with myself, like truly honest and open. Yeah.
During your awakening and your introspection and being honest with yourself, while going through that process, and like right now in this moment, what are some of your best skills? Like, what can you recognize in yourself?
Humility is one of I've always had. I've never been a braggart or a boaster. I've always been very humble, and I've always kind of led by example, like doing. So I was one of the people I just do, put my head down and like by action. So yeah, humility. Never always, and sometimes it can be a bad thing. Like, good thing can also have the Achilles heel. So I need more of the, hey, yeah, I am good, or I am good enough. Um, Hear me, as opposed to kind of standing back on the sidelines, so to speak. So humility is one, and my humor. But I also recognize my humor was also sometimes a defense mechanism when I didn't want to deal with something. So I use humor to deflect. But I've always had that, me and my friends, like humor has always been a big thing of us. Just, laughter is definitely when you have that big belly laugh, you're being authentic. Um, you're being you. So I love good laughter. I love laughing, and I love making people laugh. And I think my deep inner drive of just to kind of somehow figure out a way to keep going, I guess that's called resilience. And even though I can say, "Ooh, I haven't been doing certain things," but I I'm a stubborn SOB sometimes. So I see that in my daughter. So I think having that like, okay, somehow I'm going to figure out a way, and maybe it's not like life is never a straight line trajectory with any development. It's always twists and turns and detours. But I do feel I have that in me. Those three things that have kind of helped me,
Cool.
my tools, inner tools.
And from prior conversations and group calls with you, I know that being a good husband and good father are both really important to you.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're being a good father and husband?
Huh. I so know when I'm out of integrity with myself, man. I feel it. It's like a vibration. I know when I'm wrong. I know when I've reacted, and my wife can say something to me and I'll get defensive, and then I'll walk away and I cool down and I'm like, ah, she's so right. I'm like, oh, I hate hearing the truth sometimes. And I just kind of talk it through with myself. I'm like, yeah, I I could have responded in a much different way as opposed to reacting. Yeah, I just know it. I know it when I'm not in integrity or when I'm not being honest. I've started to recognize that in myself of how I feel. I feel closed off. I feel it in my chest and the back of my neck. Um, yeah, it's a feeling, definitely.
Hmm. And as have you always been attuned to that feeling, or is it taken like practice for like, oh wait, that feeling's telling me something?
I feel I've always had pretty good intuition. It's I've never been fully present to it on a consistent basis, especially at a younger age. Um, but I always felt like I was a pretty good judgment of people, like thin slice, like right away. And I'm like, okay, am I being a little bit too quick to judge? Okay, let me sit back. And then I'm like, yep. So I always felt like I've had that. My mom was very intuitive. So, but it's taking me along, like as I've gotten older, to kind of lean into it more and listen to it more. Yeah.
I see in a lot of men that I meet in MKP, in the Mankind Project, that being of service in some way is important to them. Is service important to you? And if so, why?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been a trainer for over 20 years in that service and trying to, help people. Currently, I've been working with a stroke patient, and it's been very rewarding for me because it's the first time I've worked with a stroke patient, and it scared the heck out of me at first. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to hurt them. But I'm like, wait a second, they're a person, they're human. Do what you know, and what you don't know, find out. So, yeah. But I've always wanted to, like, as I've gotten older, to think about like what does I want to do and how I want to help. It's always been more in that service mode. How can I help young kids in performance and youth development, physical literacy? How can I now be of service to young men and adult men to who to be a mentor? Because I wish I had somebody when I was a teenager make me aware of my thinking and to think bigger, to think differently, to have possibilities and kind of be that person that would give me a healthy kick in the butt when I needed it, but also like help me learn and grow and stretch myself more and believe in myself more. So I'm like, I want to be that person that I never had growing up. That I, my friends were my bond. My parents I loved, but they weren't like, yeah, I didn't have a lot of healthy, emotionally present role models growing up. Great, lots of great men, funny, but not ones that I could sit and talk to. They would sit and talk to me in a real, authentic way.
So you mentioned that you could sometimes use humor to deflect.
Yeah.
Looking back, is that kind of how humor was used by your dad and your uncles?
There are a lot of big personalities, so they just use humor because they liked humor, and they were a lot of them were very funny. Um, but I do think, and I'll speak, like, my dad was not a person who talked about his emotions. It was two speeds: silence or rage, or anger or rage. Um, and he could never, like, my dad was never the person to sit me on his lap or sit down with me and give me a big hug and say, Anthony, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. He did it through acts of service because he didn't know how to emotionally do all these things. Because I know, and this is where I've come to learn, where I've had more compassion, is that he didn't have this growing up. And so of course he was this way. He was doing the best that he could. And I've still recognized all the wonderful things that my parents did. And I have this picture right here that I hold of they look like movie stars. This is like back in the 60s. And I'm so thankful because my dad didn't have a choice growing up. And my parents made a lot of sacrifices so that me and my sisters could have choices to do what we want, be who we want to be. And for that, I'm so ever grateful for. And I'm trying to really recognize more of that with my history as opposed to being a victim of it. It's part of my story, but it doesn't define me.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an important point to get to for anyone, to realize that you're more than your past, and you're more than your present. Right. Everything is temporary circumstances, and your choice is what you do with them and about them.
Yeah. And I'm finally coming around to that. It's taken a long time to get there, but I'm just grateful that I am on this path.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your dad was never one to put you on his lap and say that he was proud of you. So now, with your years of introspection and even hindsight, or recognizing you want more than this box of masculinity, the old man box, what are you proud of?
I'm proud of being open to this kind of scary, confusing process of reconnecting with my center, with that golden ball, as I read about in Iron John. And because when I look at my daughter, when I look at little kids play, they all have it. And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to get that golden ball back. So I'm proud of myself for going through that process and not ignoring it, because I could easily just continue down the path that I've been on, which is just denial, like too scared to deal with it. So I'm going to do other things to repress these things. Drugs, alcohol, all sorts of things. We could even, I even come to realize with exercise, which I've always loved, like, well, it can be a bad side of that too if I'm doing it to escape. So I'm proud that I've gotten to this point to rediscover myself and become really truly who I am now and moving forward. I'm really proud of that, like, because there's so much more, I feel.
What's one thing that you wish more men knew?
Gosh, that's a good question. I wish more men knew that people like you, people like MKP, people like me are out there, and that they don't have to keep wearing their masks. They can shed their masks and still be masculine and be everything that their partner, their spouse, whoever wants them to be. Yeah, I just wish more men knew about how they can be more authentic and more real.
Yeah, just permission to be yourself.
Permission, yeah. None of this braggadocio, all this. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's so tiring.
Is there a particular, you mentioned No More Mr. Nice Guy already. Is there a particular habit, book, or practice that you would like to recommend that has helped you a lot?
Gosh, there's been a lot of books. I mean, I think for any father out there who has a son or sons, The Wonder of Boys is a great one. I forget the author's name. But it's it was written in the mid or late 90s, but it's everything in there is very pertinent. I think, yeah, No More Mr. Nice Guy is one I just recently read, is one. Iron John is good, but I don't know if some men might hit. You got to really. There's a lot in there. So I thought that was a great book, though. It like the way it crystallized some things, and I had to read certain passages a couple times to really absorb what he was saying and the metaphors that he was using. I'm just trying to think. Is there another book? Gosh, I wish I had. Oh, I wish I knew. Yes, I wish I had books for it because, like, yeah. And I think the book "Do Hard Things" that by Stephen Magnus, I think, is a really good book on resilience and toughness and what that really means, and how. Because I grew up with this, and we've got it wrong over the years of this, drill sergeant, again, it's the man box thinking. Got to solve it on my own, do it on my own, and got to go hard, got to get through it. And that's just not it. We've gotten it wrong all these years. And that book, dispels all those myths. The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, I thought was a great book too, many years ago. And he's got another book that it's similar to the Talent Code. It has to do with groups of people. So anything by Daniel Coyle is good. So yeah, those are some of my off the top of my head recommendations.
Awesome. Is there a man besides your dad or uncles that had a big impact on you?
Growing up, I mean, I had different people I looked up to, but they weren't that. God, it's sad to say. I mean, I really, there's not one that flies off the tip of my tongue. Like, yeah, this guy, this person really opened my eyes. I mean, I had lots of different men over the years teach me things. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, and again, they disappointed me. But I've come to realize they were human. Like they were, because I put them on a pedestal. Mm. And once I found that out, I was like, oh, they're full of BS. And I didn't look at like, no, you learned a lot from them, and they're human. They have their warts. They have their stuff. Like, so that was part of my challenge, that I've recognized that I had men a lot that I looked up to at the time, but then they disappointed me, and then I kind of brushed them off.
What was the disappointment? Were they not acting in accordance with what they were telling you, or was it you just decided that whatever they were telling you and that you changed your mind that it was beneficial, or like what was the disappointment
there
rooted
were
in?
Things that I like a football coach that I looked up to, and I just felt like in the middle of a practice, the way he grabbed me and shook my helmet in front of everybody, it was embarrassing. And I was someone who worked my tail off, and I was really PO'd. I'm like, why would he do that to me in front of all the guys? Because I got nothing but shit from that. Hey, milkshake. And so, yeah, it kind of let me down about him. And then I had another, gentleman in post-college, a roommate of mine, his father, he hired me. And again, because I saw them not in integrity, because it's like they weren't leading by example. And so I got disillusioned, disappointed. And I started getting this, like, I can't trust men because they always disappoint.
Yeah, it sounds, especially with the football coach, sound like breaking trust. Like I can trust you, and like, wait, no, you're calling me, like you're physically assaulting me at a level, and also embarrassing me, and not knowing the reason or what was the benefit of that, or.
Yeah, it was someone who I really looked up to, and I know he was hard, and I didn't mind that. Like I don't mind being pushed, but being embarrassed like that physically it just broke that trust. And I just found, over the years, I would find men I'd look up to and I'd learn something from, but then they weren't integrity. And I recognized that, and I got disappointed. Uh, but I realized I can't put people on pedestals. It's like how we put athletes and all these people on pedestals, and we're like, well, and then you maybe meet them and you're like, oh, what a jerk. All these years, like, what was I doing? You have to realize that people are human, and they're all going through their stuff, or they don't know. So I have more compassion now for the people that I kind of brushed aside, and realized that, hey, I still got something out of it that was rewarding. But yeah, but I just never had that person that stuck with me, who I could go back to and sit down with and have a cup of coffee and be like, oh, look at you now, you got your own kid. And like, it's just, yeah, it's really, I find it kind of sad that I don't have that person. I have my group of friends that I've known since grade school they were kind of like that for me. Like, they were my tribe, my men that I looked up to. I look up to all of them. They're all my age and all over the place now. So,
and are you still in touch? Are you still a tight circle of friends?
Yeah, even though I only have one friend who lives close by, and then everyone else, it's like Zurich, Breckenridge, Jacksonville, North Carolina, California, all over the place, scattered, Texas. So we still all, keep in close touch, and pockets of us see one another when we can. So yeah, they've always been like my tribe.
And it seems to me, tell me what you think, that the pattern of being disappointed in men and realizing that you can't trust them, is that what's driving you to want to be better and to want to be that person that you didn't have for others?
I think I wasn't. Yeah, that was underneath the surface, and then it's come through. Yes, it's exactly that. I want to be that person I didn't have. I want to be a better person, a better human, a better man to myself, so that once I get my room in order, and then I can move out from there and help others. It has a domino effect, in my family, and then my friends and the people I work with. It's nice when people say, "Oh, you have a different energy." It's like it's cool to get that acknowledgement, because you could do all this introspective work, and sometimes like, God, am I doing too much of this? Is it like anything? Is it too much of, like, am I taking myself too serious? And I have to stop and say, okay, I can still be serious about this, but not take myself too serious. But I'm always trying to recognize that there's always too much of anything that I have to be aware of. Yeah.
So with all the work that you're doing on yourself, connecting with other men, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to stepping into the man I know I can be, and that could be someone who could be more of a leader. Stepping into my, like, true warrior, king, magician roles, and lover. That's what you have right there back of you. In understanding them, but like in their true highest selves. I'm looking forward to that process of pushing myself, of wanting to be that mentor to other men and young adults, and what's going to become of all that. So I'm excited about that, this process, which there's no end goal, but I'm going to keep following the breadcrumbs.
Good. I was going to ask that. Was there some sort of end state of the perfect man that was your goal, or do you just realize it's this always unfolding thing?
Yeah, because there's never, the to-do list will never get done in life, and it's, this work will never get done. So it's how I'm going to try and always come with a beginner's mind, and how much can I keep learning and growing and evolving and challenging what I thought maybe was true in myself or of something, and say, maybe it's not. Maybe there is another way. And for me, it's a big thing for me is doing more listening and less talking in this process.
I appreciate sharing so much of you and your journey. Is there anything else you want to share? Imagine there's a man that's, he's unhappy, but he's not sure he wants to do. I've heard this is hard work. I don't know if I want to do this. Do I want to, what do you want to share with that guy?
I would say to this man, because I've seen it now past many years in front of other men, is like, you're not alone. You're not alone out there. Whatever it is you're feeling, down, not worthy, whether going through a tough divorce, job, like you feel lost, disillusioned, angry. It's like, know that there are other men out there going through that can help shoulder that burden and help carry you and lift you up. That it's out there if you just give yourself an opportunity to just be open to it, be open to listening to other men, be open to whatever, whether it be a pastor, a friend, a group like MKP or something else where you can be yourself, be open to it. Because I know I hear a lot of men say, yeah, my wife, it was like kind of an ultimatum in a way, like, you got to do this. And they're so thankful that they did. And then so are their wives. It's like a win-win. Because it really is. No matter what, even if the marriage goes to hell and the job does too, you can still pick up the pieces and recreate yourself and start all over. And I know that sounds easy. Yeah, just do that. Like, because life is hard. Being human, this human condition that we're in, experiencing, it's not easy. It's hard enough being human. And then the other stuff that we throw on ourselves, and then everything else that gets piled on. It's no wonder why there's so much anger and fear out there. It's palpable sometimes. Yeah. So that's what I would say is you're not alone.
Indeed. Anthony, what's the best way for someone to get in touch with you or to learn more about what you're up to?
They can easily go to my website, just my name, anthonyscire.com.
Awesome.
And ascirecoach@gmail.com.
Cool. Well, Anthony, thanks again for joining me, willing to come on and share yourself. And I know it's not easy to serve yourself up on a plate to the world, but I do believe it always brings value. And again, we talked about service, and I think any man being open and honest is a service to everybody. So thank you again. Thank you, Andy, for having me and having this platform and everything you're doing too, of being of service. So I feel like what you're doing is hugely important. So awesome. Thank you. Cool. Yep. Thanks everyone for listening. Wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, please give a like, share, a comment, share with somebody else, and visit realmenfeel.org. The blog posting for this show will have links to all the books mentioned, all the resources talked about. And if you want to reach out to me, realmenfeel@gmail.com. Always glad to hear from you. And if you want to explore making this year the best year of your life so far, book a clarity call with me. And that's not a podcast. It's just a conversation with us in private, theandygrant.com/talk. And until next time, be good to yourself.